What's up, y'all? Can y'all hear me? I don't know why I can't see the chat. Let me see. Well, I see my face at least. That's something. Am I echoey at all? Because I hear my exact, wow. That needs to not be a thing. Huh. Okay. Well, let's see if I can power through. What's up, y'all? I'm Cameron Selby. Oh, no, I can't do that. No. It is way too loud. Let me see. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Oh, I say green dot. Maybe that's the reason. Okay. How about now, chat? Can you guys hear me all right? Let's see. I think it now. And I figured out the echo, which is good. So what's up, Emery? All right. Apologies on the delay on that. Trying to still wiggle through all this stuff, but yeah, we got a live game going on in Dublin. Looks like Pittsburgh before I got on and started the stream. They went up 7-3 with the Gainwell touchdown because Warren was a late scratch, or I guess a shocking inactive, if you wanted to consider it that. So that's the fun part of these 8:30 games is that you never know when or if these guys will go, turn, I guess, be ruled inactive or not. I guess he was limited all week, but he injured it or tweaked it during practice this week, and they got there later based on the complaints of Aaron Rodgers that I saw in a press conference. So Gainwell got the start. I saw Bailey in our friend league picked up Gainwell, and of course he is thriving with all those waiver wire pickups and injuries so far with some of his teams. So, but with that said, let me get into some lineup building. It is an interesting slate today. All 32 teams are playing this week, but there's only 11 games on this main slate, largely due to double. Um, I guess a two gamer tomorrow night on Monday Night Football. There's always a Sunday night and a Thursday night game, and then also this Dublin game that's going on between the Steelers and the Vikings. So it's an 11 gamer. Should be a fun one. We are going to kick it off with a early only setup. That would be a 7 gamer. If you guys wanted to partake in that, we're going to go through some of our favorite stacks builds. But once again, kind of a recap and review if you have not checked out our first look for the main slate this week that we released on Friday. The 5 highest totals, nothing's really changed, but it's the Colts and the Rams are the stack of the day. Obviously, the thumbnail for a reason. Puka Nacua and Tyler Warren will be heavily talking points. Next up, you have the Ravens and Chiefs, the 3 o'clock game that not a lot of sexy names to click on, not a lot of high ownership that's going to be involved in that game, but could be a ton of points based on the way the Ravens defense has played. And at least the Chiefs played in a shootout week 1. It's been kind of lower totals since then, but I can see that being a back and forth affair like it always is. Bears Raiders might be one of my favorites, and that's been a common theme for me because I've just enjoyed the Bears being underpriced so far. Caleb Williams, obviously, he's you know, he's smashed in 2 games. He had 29 last week, 2 yards short of his 300-yard bonus. And then in week 1, he ended up with a rushing touchdown going for 24 and then a modest 18. I think he was 55 in week 2, and that was one of my highest plays. So it didn't really work out, but he's been a pretty steady, consistent fantasy quarterback all season long. And then the Raiders, meanwhile, Geno Smith has had 300-yard games multiple times, playing catch up. So that one is basically a pick 'em in a positive game environment. That'll be a lot of fun. Saints and Bills, make it that what you will. It's one of the highest totals. It's only because of Buffalo's side because they are still a 15-point total, or a 15-point favorite rather. Jags 49ers. Mac Jones is no longer the starter. Brock Purdy looks like he's going to give it a go. Juwan Jennings is back. So, 2 teams going to be back and forth. And then contrarian games of the week, both of those in the 12 o'clock slate, but the Commanders and Falcons at 43.5. I think with Mariota being out again, Terry McLaurin now being out, so Deebo Samuel obviously clear. I wouldn't say chalk, but he will be owned for sure at the exactly 6K flat range. I think Zach Ertz might be one of the most popular tight ends on the slate. And then on the Falcons, the other side, I think that's a lot of fun spots, buy low opportunities that there's not a lot of ownership on. Nobody's really playing Falcons right now, which I thought was interesting because the Commanders have, they allowed Trey Tucker to have 40, Geno for 360 in playing catch up last week, and Atlanta's actually favored in this game. So with that said, I mean, if everybody's going to be under 10% owned, Michael Penix right now is the third lowest owned quarterback on the entire 11 game slate today. London, season low discount on price. Kyle Pitts as well, all of them showing positive leverage. So we'll be talking about them. And then lastly, the Panthers and Patriots. Another similar thing where it's just a lot of value and a lot of not so popular names. Uh, Chuba Hubbard, I guess, is just always going to be low 6K running back. Tedorova Millen was kind of off and on the injury report, but him being under 6K is still a steady play. And then New England, it's been annoying to roster the entire season. So outside of Drake May being, somewhat popular, there's not really anybody pulling ownership other than Hunter Henry, being a 10% owned tight end, which is somewhat high. But everybody else is going to be low. I think there's a buy low opportunity that I will be talking about in a second. But Josh Allen is the clear cut dominant quarterback on this Sunday slate. Or at least the only thing is just if they score 30, will he be involved? Because last time in a blowout situation, kind of projecting similar to what New Orleans is today, he was not involved on any touchdowns, and he ended up with 12 fantasy points at 7,100. Even though that was a cheap price and we were on him, that did not work out so well. But James Cook was the one that was really involved on that game. So is it an inverse effect where James Cook is the chalky guy today, Josh Allen is not, and then Josh Allen has all 3 touchdowns today or 4, and James Cook just does not score, stays kind of a dud based on his ownership? That'll be an interesting thing to bring out. But that is one of the first, I guess, teams to talk about. There's not really many dominant quarterbacks. Obviously, Jaden Daniels out once again. Jalen Hurts, it's tough because of the fact that it is a very back and forth affair that could take place. But he's very spotty with depending on how they're playing from ahead or behind. He caught an early, or not caught, but he ran for a couple of rushing touchdowns in week 1 that salvaged his day for throwing for just 150. The following week, only scored 1 rushing touchdown and still only had 11 fantasy points. But then last week, they were down 19 at one point in the game, 26-7. Coming all the way back, he was a large part of it. So not only did he have the rushing touchdown once again, he also had 3 passing touchdowns. So he got there with 30 fantasy points. Going against the Bucs today as 3.5-point road favorite. Like the writing is on the wall for Philly players to pan out the way they can and will. Just who does it? It could be Saquon, who has yet to have a true boom game this year. He has yet to go over 100 yards for a bonus. He scored the first 2 games to get about a modest 17-18, but that's obviously not going to do it if that was a main slate price point. Obviously, the Philly game showdown is kind of a different story, but the Kansas City side, obviously 8,000, you need more than 17, which is probably less than what he was projected going into the day. And then last week, he was just a non-factor on the comeback win. I can't even say it was a negative game script because 23 opportunities. He just had 55 yards, modest, after destroying the Rams twice last year for over 200 all-purpose yards in each game. He was pretty much a dud. But A.J. Brown broke out of his slump. Obviously, he was a large part in the comeback. His first 100-yard game after combining for 35 the first 2 weeks. And then Devontae Smith had a pretty solid game as well, catching a touchdown, 8 for 60. But he hasn't had his boom game yet either. But Dallas Goedert, for what it's worth, he did miss last week. He missed week 2, was barely involved in week 3, but did catch a 33-yard touchdown. That was his only reception of the game. So doing that side of the things would be a way to go. It's a little bit tougher on the Tampa side. Mike Evans out multiple weeks. Chris Godwin is a true game time decision, if I remember. Oh, he's actually expected to play, but I don't expect him to be a fantasy asset. I'm not touching him at 6,000. But hopefully that just kind of opens things up a little bit for Emeka Egbuka, who's been very strong, solid to start the year. He's had 3 touchdowns, at least 12.5 fantasy points every single week. And now with Mike Evans out, hopefully he just kind of sustains that target share that he's had all season long so far and stay productive. But right now, he's not really popping in terms of ownership. Maybe because it's a season high price point. His price has risen at least 500 every single week since week one. So I think people are scared off by the price, but it's not like there's a ton of people, especially on the 12 o'clock slate, that you really need to truly spend up on. I did mention in terms of the running backs this week, like there's a lot of of the typical dominant running backs that we know and love, the Saquons, the Bijans, the CMC, who's on the 3 o'clock slate. We're just talking early only at the moment, but Jameer Gibbs as well, and a lot of them in bottom five matchups. So I know some of them are matchup proof. Christian McCaffrey, in spite of playing a defense who's top five against running backs this year so far, is still the chalkiest guy on the day um, at the position. But I think a lot of people are going to be living in the punting at running back play, but at the same time, receiver wise, especially on this slate because Puka Nakua is now on this slate. Nico Collins, the most expensive receiver. Nobody's playing Nico Collins. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Are you going to trust Malik Neighbors with a debuting quarterback against a tough defense? Mike Evans out. Ladd McConkey has been the wide receiver 3 on his own team. So I don't think he's going to pull any ownership, even though he's got a good matchup. I'll be talking about him and the Chargers in general. But there's not a lot of highly owned guys especially on the 12 o'clock slate. So he's a name that really sticks out to me. I think maybe with the difference in ownership would be really reflected on the main versus early, but at least early only. I think it's as safe as it gets as long as he stays healthy. Knock on wood. I think Chris Godwin actually being back helps him because it doesn't just they don't know. Oh, it's only going to go to Emeka Ibuka. So with that said, I think it's just a name worth mentioning. Looks like Emory called a 80-yard touchdown from DK Metcalf a couple minutes back. So that line that I sent this morning, or at least last night in Discord, is not doing too hot, especially if I faded DK. But that is not at all how I expected the start of this game to go, because of the fact that I expected Pittsburgh coming in late. There was like Skylar Thompson got robbed yesterday. There was that kind of news. The Jalen Warren late inactive, and they're coming out swinging, and they're up 14-3 so far. So kudos to the Steelers, who we are not lockstep on, and how we see them going from week to week. What is up, Gail? Nice to see you in chat as well. But anywho, another want to kind of come down over here as well because, like I said, it is a really solid matchup for the Chargers today against the New York Giants. Not really pulling a ton of ownership in terms of that team in general. Justin Herbert on the main at least is showing is less than 6% owned as a quarterback, and then obviously a lot of people are going to be playing Omari and Hampton today. Najee Harris out for the year. He's less than 6,000. Good opportunity as well. But I mean, Ladd McConkey showing roughly 6% owned. Quinn Johnston, Keenan Allen. It feels like a lot of people are just like, hey, they can't really sustain this. But I think one or two of them will today, and so that's a game I kind of want to be overweight to. The problem is I don't really know if and who I want to play with the Giants. Cam Scatterboo is the name that most people are going to flock to because of the fact that he not only had a breakout game on Sunday Night Football last week against the Chiefs, going for 121 all-purpose yards, a score, 24 fantasy points, and now Tyron Tracy is out a couple of weeks, so he is the lead back, the only guy for just $5,500. And so he'll be one of the highest owned running backs today. Problem is, it's not a great matchup. I mean, the Chargers still top 5 against running backs this week. And I actually think there's a pretty decent amount of rookie running backs. If you read the description in our first league video, I think there's a lot of good spots, interesting spots for rookies today. And I guess that includes Cam Scatterboo, but it's not like it's the matchup base. It's basically a volume play if you're going that route. And then I mentioned Malik Neighbors earlier. I mean, yes, he has that 41-point ceiling, but he also has a low floor. I don't expect it to be that low on a regular basis. But $7,000 debuting quarterback, tough matchup. if they're playing from behind down a score or two the entire game, he could get there at 7,000. That's a modest price. And it's not like, I don't know. There's just a lot. I think today is a good day to build a well balanced line between whether it's running back, whether it's receiver, tight end. I don't think you got to go high low a lot because there's just value everywhere. If you're talking quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, even defense, there's a name today that we'll be talking about down low, all the way down here. Um, that is showing pretty solid leverage today on by far the lowest point total between the 0-3 Texans, 0-3 Titans. Both offenses are not playing well, and it's the lowest total. So that only means that they're probably going to just shoot out, similar to what the Jets and Steelers did back in week one, and it's going to be the highest total game out of nowhere, just like we all predict all the time. But anyways, so another quarterback, he did well for us last week, Marcus Mariota. His price rose $1,000, but that's still not enough based on what we expect the Commanders to do today against the Falcons. AJ Terrell out for what it is worth. Even though Atlanta's defense as a whole has been playing better, they still had 30 dropped against them last week, or 23 total. Because one I believe was a fumble return or a pick six. Michael Penix did not play well, but at the same time, I think it's a very good opportunity. Both of these quarterbacks, 5,100, 5,000, pretty self-explanatory and modestly priced options on who is playing who. Let me pull up their skill players just so you can see them all in one. Bijan Robinson, obviously that's still a tough matchup. But I mean, he's as safe and matchup proof as it gets. He had 16 fantasy points, over 110 all-purpose yards in a 30-0 loss. So as long as the game is staying close and competitive, I mean, like I said, Atlanta is actually favored in this game. I think that he is in play. 82 is a lot for him though, but that's just going to keep his ownership down. And in terms of the rest of the guys, Deebo Samuel, it is pretty self-explanatory. He's had a really solid season so far. Had a dud last week because Washington was just playing from ahead the entire game. Bad game script for him, but Terry McLaurin being out, being underdogs, top corner for Atlanta being out, I think just the writing's on the wall for him to have a very safe and solid day. I don't know about the ceiling because Marcus Mariota is not a high-volume passer, but it is just worth noting. And then Drake London, mentioned earlier, him, Kyle Pitts, way down at 36 are in amazing buy low opportunities and spots. $5,700 is just not nearly enough for him, but at the same time, because he hasn't had a boom game week one, he was our thumbnail, had a lot of opportunity. He dropped 2 touchdowns on the same drive before he went out with the shoulder injury to try to tie it up, and did not return. So he had 15 targets through about 3.5 quarters. He just didn't score, and it was unfortunate. The following week, he was a game time decision, but in an ugly game, he just kind of was fine. He also had a fumble though for what it was worth. And then last week, I games like that when it's 30-0, that kind of a shocking, game environment, script, result, whatever you want to call it, really tough to even just kind of use that as a sample. But $5,700, nobody's really playing him today. Less than 10% owned on the main slate, and on the early only, I wouldn't assume that a lot of people would flock to him because there's a lot of interesting spots in the low 6K, high 5K range as well. So he's a name. JCM, it sounds like he's going to play. Not a good matchup, but I don't really know what to make of him because as soon as Austin Eckler went down, everybody thought it was going to be the JCM show going forward. He did run for a touchdown. That is all he did. I think Chris Rodriguez was actually the guy that had the breakaway. No. It was Jeremy McNichols that had the breakaway touchdown run 60 yards against the Raiders and killed a lot of people's day because that's how fantasy football happens all the time. But Chris Rodriguez actually had the bulk of the carries, did not do the most with it. But, it's just worth noting that backfield, I don't think is just going to be a one-sided affair. unless there's just more injuries to happen. Zach Ertz, he's been as steady as they come. Okay game last week, but um, weeks 1 and 2 scoring touchdowns. It's worked out. Marcus Mariota in relief last year. The reason I played him a ton last week was because Mariota came in for relief twice last year. And both of those games, Zach Ertz scored a touchdown and had some pretty solid passing volume. And so did Terry McLaurin for what it was worth. But I just thought that the Commanders essentially just play from ahead and were up too much for anybody to contribute. I don't really consider myself concerned about opponent ranks for tight ends because it's very volatile based on who you target, how you target, and stuff like that. So unless you're playing a dominant tight end, like that could really kind of skew things. Or you play Cleveland, who like 2 of their top 3 target leaders so far this year are both tight ends. So those can always kind of skew numbers a little bit. Kyle Pitts, another name, like I mentioned, he's been steady and solid. He's obviously has not scored. I mean, 7.7, I will honestly kind of take it tight end if I've got to punt the position. There's not a clear and obvious answer. A couple of my favorite tight ends today are in the 3 o'clock slate anyways. So if you are talking about overall, the highest priced tight end is Dalton Kincaid in a 15-point favorite as a 15-point favorite. And then Sam Laporta, 4,400, is a 10-point favorite. And then there's times where he just kind of gets game scripted out. Juwan Johnson has probably been the most consistent tight end so far this year. And he's still having 8 targets and scoring over 10 fantasy points in games that they're down 38-3 at halftime. And so even if it is a potential blowout, it's not like he can't get there today. Either Hunter Henry only goes off when I do not play him. So if you play him, he's probably going to score 1.9, but if you don't, he's probably going to score 29. So just make that information what you will. But yeah, very fun slate. At least on the early only, I kind of have a direction in the games of where I want to go. The Washington Atlanta game, I just kind of broke down pretty extensively. That is probably my favorite of the bunch based on a price perspective. Philly Tampa is up there, just kind of if you can squeeze some guys in. And then the Chargers and Giants are another one. So yeah, I would say let's go ahead and we'll build a first look with this early on in the contest. I'm going to start with a steady quarterback and then we'll go down and punt one. But if you guys, while we're building, if you're new to the show, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you are familiar with the show and how this works, just if you ever want to suggest any kind of build, any quarterback, any kind of guy you want to force in a lineup, I will do my best to build what I think a good direction to go is. But with this one, I'm going to start off and I'm going to go with a Chargers build. And I think it's very interesting to talk about because, like I said, Omarion Hampton should be one of the more popular running backs. I think he's stackable. As soon as they're in a negative game script last week, has 7 targets, 59 yards. He was a quality pass catcher in college as well. So it is worth noting that I don't mind stacking him, but probably the more natural pivot today, if you are going to be going with the Chargers build, is to not be playing him because that's a way to get different. And on top of that, because there's so many receivers that are in interesting spots to me, but a lot of them being in the later slate, you kind of got to fill some positions out. So I'm going to start off with Lad McConkey, and I wish I could tell you the dog in the fight I have between these two. Quinn Johnston, 24 targets through 3 games, catching 3 touchdowns. Keenan Allen has scored in every single game. Once again, insane target share, 28 targets so far this year. So pick your poison. I have no dog in the fight, but I think this is a buy low, ownership low opportunity for a lad who has not scored yet. And I just think that, especially on the early, let's say when there's not really a ton of options up top, I think it's a reasonable way of just going him and then clicking one of these guys, maybe doing both, maybe doing neither and going Hampton. It's all affordable. Let's go ahead. We'll say Keenan Allen just for the best ball vibes and what he's been doing as what we drafted him to be, a wide receiver 7. And he's been in starting lineups every single week, essentially. going into the season, which is what you want to see. In terms of bring back, it's pretty easy to just kind of fit in Cam Scatterboo in this early only slate. One name I wanted to bring up because I think it's very interesting, especially if Vic is in the chat because he is a Patriot fan. Travion Henderson, he has not had obviously the opportunity that you would like to see for a second round overall running back, and was one of the highest ADP jumps that I can remember for a non-injury situation. He started out like in the sixth, seventh round, ended up the end of the season being a fourth round pick, high third round pick in some platforms, and obviously has not scored a touchdown yet. He has not really had a ton of opportunity yet. But last week, Ramondre Stevenson, brings back the fumbling problems, and then Antonio Gibson follows it up and puts one on the ground himself. One second, let me pull up some snap counts real quick. If you ever want to kind of dabble into some advanced studying data, footballguys.com has a really good snap share and snap chart that you can dabble into, and it is really helpful in terms of just kind of seeing some of the, especially on showdowns when you don't really know who to play. They really kind of help some of the lower tier guys stand out. But in terms of the Patriots, like I mentioned, Henderson having a season high snap count. As soon as I think Ramondre fumbled a second time going into the end zone, from that point to where Gibson Stevenson had 3 fumbles combined, Henderson had 82% of the snaps the rest of the way. He just obviously did not score. He was inefficient, but he did have 14 opportunities, which was pretty cool to see. And today, I think with all these other guys, Quinshon Judkins having back-to-back successful days to start his career, Cam Scatterboo I mentioned, Omarion Hampton, we'll be talking about Ashton Genty later in the 3 o'clock slate. There's a lot of rookie running backs in really good spots, and I think with him finishing the game with the amount of workload he did, and then on top of that, there was a rumor on the Wednesday and Thursday practice where he's getting the first reps and drills out of the backfield. Even if he doesn't start, and maybe that was a wash, I think that this is a 15 opportunity kind of day for him. And Carolina, last year, historically bad against running backs, and obviously has not surrendered a ton so far this year. But 5,200 and nobody's playing him right now. I think he's less than 5% owned. I'm going to take some shots and be overweight to Mr. Travion Henderson today. But in terms of these other guys, especially if it's early on the slate, I understand if you want to get all the way up here to some guys, James Cook, if you think he's involved in the blowout at all, he's probably got a 20-point floor for the most part, as long as it doesn't get too ugly too fast. And it's kind of like Kenneth Walker, where Kenneth Walker last week was my play of the week, and he absolutely just did not really pan out because they gave him 2 touchdowns, but he didn't play much in the second half at all. Let's try to plug him in and see what we can do. I don't think you need to bring back, but if you do and you want to correlate it that way, I think Juwan Johnson is probably the obvious one. I actually want to see if I can correlate the Atlanta-Washington game with the rest of my line. I'm going to go ahead and put in a cheap defense. Tennessee sticks out to me because they're so cheap, and as long as they don't allow 35 real life points, at least defensively, against the Colts last week. Houston offense has not played well at all. Lowest total game on the day. So $2,300, pretty reasonable price. Probably going to be most of my defenses today is one of those two. So if we can go up, we will. But for now, I just want to see there because I know tight end, it's going to be something cheap with the 4,500 being the highest price tag. Let's go ahead and say Zach Ertz. And then we'll go ahead and we'll say Drake London is the bring back or Skinny in that game. So you got a little correlation there. You got the double stack bring back with Cam Scatterboo, stand alone with James Cook, and that leaves you $7,200 remainder. That's actually a lot of money, a lot more than I expected. That leaves you enough for Emeka Ibuka. If you wanted to pivot from Cam Scatterboo, you would need a 5,700 or lower running back, but he's in the pool. obviously. Bucky, I'm probably going to stay away from. I mean, kind of pick your poison. I kind of am interested in getting up to Nico based on his lack of ownership today. He finally had a boom game, um, back-to-back games with touchdowns, averaging 10 targets a game. Uh, he could have had 2 or possibly more if CJ didn't overthrow him twice in the end zone on that showdown slate, Monday main slate, whatever you want to call it, in week 2. But for this time, just to put a button on it, let's go ahead and say Mecca Ibuka, leave 400 remainder. Defense wise, that allows you to get up to any of these guys. If you believe in Carolina, going for 22 last week, a lot of that heavily influenced by not only a defensive touchdown, but allowing 0 points. So New England, who's kind of been up and down, they had a lot of turnovers last week. You can talk me into it. I'm probably fine just leaving it alone like that. Or if you didn't want to do that, instead of Cam Skydoo and Mecca Ibuka, you can pivot. Like I mentioned, the other running back that I talked about, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins up there as well. You can afford either, but that allows you to get back to Malik Neighbors as a correlated play. $100. That just gives you Tampa Bay. Not really interested in that. So you can afford Nico if you just wanted a standalone and just correlated play. But I think that's fine. Is just doing that. What's going on, Ezekiel? He has a question. Should I flex Golden, Henderson, or Moore? I'm assuming that's DJ Moore. Ooh, that is a good question. I'm gonna ride with Travion Henderson today. He's my guy today. I feel pretty good about him. I have him in a lot of leagues, and I'm starting him in a few at flex because of the fact that I think this is a good opportunity for him to break out. Don't necessarily think he's going to be a workhorse, get the over 20 touches and multiple scores. Kind of, I'm not even saying he has that kind of ceiling, but I think pass catching volume, rushing upside. I think it's a 15 touch floor today. Good matchup, good opportunity at home as well. I feel pretty good about Travion. So I'll be building with him today. But as your flex question, I think that is my dog. And if not, probably second place would probably be. I say DJ Moore because that's my favorite game environment today between the Raiders and the Bears. And I know he has not played well so far, but neither has Golden. Honestly, it's a good problem to have, and I hope they all score 20 and close enough to where you win your matchup no matter what. But that would be my answer for you today, Mr. Ezekiel. Emery saying, what about going with Allen and Johnston instead of Ladd? You can do that. I don't really know what you're trying to afford. I think that's probably going to be the most. If somebody does a double stack with Herbert, I bet you this might be the most common way because recency bias and what people are trying to do. The thing is, what are you trying to afford? Is kind of my question. I guess that you can get off of Travion in this example. I'm going to put London back in. I know what you can do. If you believe in Cam Skadaboo as the preferred bring back in that game environment, that's enough for Bijan. I know I wouldn't want 2 Falcons, so I might sub out Drake and I might put in somebody else. Keon Coleman has been a dud. Nobody's going to play him though. Devontae Smith still too cheap at $5,400. Good game environment as well. The receiver 5K range is a lot uglier on the 12 o'clock than it is the 3 o'clock. But it is a reasonable thing to think about going with Quinn and Keenan. You are correct on that. The tough thing is just there's not really a ton of like, I want to afford this guy since we already do have James Cook in there. Maybe it is Saquon's breakout game, and that leaves you 61. Don't really want to play Kamara as a 15-point dog. Debo Samuel, but then again, you have Zach Ertz. So in this regard, probably to get the correlation, go in Jawan Johnson to pair with James Cook. And then what did I have? 6,000 left. That is enough for Debo. So that kind of gets you there. Has the correlation that you want. Double dominant running back. I don't think a lot of people are going to do that today. I think a lot of people are either going to double punt value or they're going to go one high, one low because of all the value in the low 6K, high 5K range today. So that's a fun build, to be honest. There's a lot of fun ways to build with Justin today. I'm not going to lie. But for purposes of trying to do some kind of cashy look, I want to try to fit in Omarion Hampton because he might be the most popular running back on the early only slate, I would say. If it isn't one of these dominant running backs, it might be him. So going with Omarion, going with let's excuse me, go ahead and go with Keenan. That leaves you about 66 per. Um, try to fit Nico in there because I like him today. 5,900's not really fun. Um, I know it doesn't really correlate sometimes with defense, but if they get you 4 points, that's I'm as happy as a clam as long as you hit the other guys. So I'm not really nervous about that. If they were a $3,700 defense and I'm also pairing them with the other side, that's a way lower outcome of working out for you. So doesn't as excite me as much. Ted McMillan, he should play today due to a calf injury. There is some re-risk um, injury re-risk. But he is one of the more popular plays, at least on FanDuel, because I think he's 5,600 over there, which is way too cheap. Kind of similar to what Cam Scadaboo is. I think people will play him, but he's not going to be considered chalky today on DK. But on FanDuel, when he's 5,400, you rarely see a cheaper price tag on FanDuel compared to DraftKings, since you have 10 extra thousand to play with. So very different ownership purposes for those guys. Um, let's see. I still don't have a bring back, so I guess that works. Going there, like I said, a lot of different ways to build, but I want to give another look. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say let's do a Marcus Mariota build. That probably feels safer due to his rushing upside. I mean, literally last week, 2 minutes into the game, because they had Debo run a 70-yard kick return back, and then they got one first down all the way down to the goal line, and then he ran in a touchdown to already have 6 points for you as a minimum price quarterback, just like that, which was pretty fun. So he finished with 21, and 5,000 is still too cheap. He can still get there, but even in a blowout where he really kind of salvaged, because there was a late touchdown to Luke McCaffrey. He was kind of hovering around 14, 15, which was still going to be fine, but he really got there with 21 there. Atlanta, still a good matchup as well. I think Bryce Young last week, for what it's worth, or he actually wasn't too involved in the 30-0 blowout. But Mariota can still get there, and I think it's pretty easy, self-explanatory, that you can single stack him. That would have worked last week. Honestly, a naked stack with him would have worked because there was nobody that really went off. Debo was a bust. Terry McLaurin was robbed of a touchdown and also got hurt. And then Zach Ertz only got you about 6.8. So um, you can go naked if you want. I'd probably prefer to single, if anything, especially if prices are this reasonable. Um, I think a lot of people, if I had to guess, based on the ownership that I see in that game, I bet you a lot of people are going to be preferring to go with Zach Ertz as a single compared to a Debo as a single. Even though Debo is showing really strong leverage today, um, I think a lot of people are going to do that. So in this regard, since that's the case, I think the way to pivot is doing a bring back of Kyle Pitts. I mean, right now he is showing, let's see. Oh, he's actually showing some pretty high ownership at 7.4. But with that being said, if a lot of people are going to be single stacking Zach Ertz, nobody really plays double tight end on slates like these. I love doing that when the opportunity is right. I don't think this is the opportunity, at least in the early only slate. But doing a single of Debo, who's the lesser owned of the two Commander pass catchers, and then Kyle Pitts, who is I know Drake London is showing lower ownership, but I feel like this is a good spot to get different. Um, bringing back, not bringing back, already did bring back. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and put Omarion Hampton into every line, at least early only, that I play that doesn't have Justin Herbert, because I just think the price, the ceiling, the floor, all of that makes too much sense today to not want to just hammer Omarion. He might be one of my most exposed guys on the entire day. So 5,900, I'm completely fine with that. And then don't necessarily have to bring back or correlate. I'm going to put in Travion Henderson to be a little different since nobody wants to play him today. I think because of the value that we have so far, we can get to a more expensive defense. So let me see if I can afford Houston, who, if price didn't matter, might be the best defense of the day. Buffalo is the most pricey, but they've got two different duds in games. Last week I think they were a 2 touchdown favorite, and ended up only scoring 2 fantasy points. They've got injuries and stuff like that. Don't really want to touch them. Detroit, interesting. Haven't had the boom, but again, you can't really predict defensive touchdowns. Last week there was 8 defensive or special teams touchdowns, so you kind of needed one of those people and needed to be working out. Houston has been steady. They haven't allowed 20 points so far this year, but they haven't gotten really many turnovers, only 2 turnovers through 3 games. And so playing a rookie quarterback at home in a must-win game, 3,400 is pretty reasonable. If you don't like that, Chargers, same kind of thing against a debuting rookie. They're overall probably a slightly better defense, but at the same time, I think them and Houston are identical plays to me and basically identical prices. So um, let's try to throw them in. I'm gonna put Emeka Ibuka in there, and then let's see what the last 2 guys in. Easily can afford kind of whatever you want. Bijan would be fun. Already did put a Atlanta player in there though. Kind of usually don't love doing the double bring back with a single stack, but at the same time, since Atlanta's favored, maybe that's the environment. Nobody would play Kyle Pitts and Bijan together with a bring back of a stack Mariota Debo. I mean, it's in play. Um, don't want to play Lad since we already have a Marion in there, but if you went AJ Brown, you got the correlation with the Mecca Ibuka, AJ Brown, Nico Collins in there as a stud that not a ton of people will be on today. Um, with Houston's D, Kyle Pitts bringing back and correlating with Mariota Debo. And if you wanted to flip that, you don't trust Nico, which I understand because CJ Stroud's not been playing well. You can kind of flip that, put AJ Brown in there, and that flex that affords you up to Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley. Obviously, that would give you 2 Philly players, Monroe St. Brown, James Cook as well. James Cook is probably I don't even know if I can say safer play because I can just see such a scenario today where he just completely just 4 touchdowns, but he's not involved on a single one. And a lot of people are on him because last time it was the blowout, he worked out and scored nearly 30. But at the same time, I see the upside. I just am kind of nervous a little bit about the ownership, is what I'm saying. Is because in terms of the dominant running backs, he probably jumps off the paper the most in terms of obvious plays. Let's see. Let's filter this to some ownership, and I'll tell you. Yeah, he's the second over on the main slate. He's the second highest owned player. So on the early only slate, he will be the highest owned player. Obvious ways to get different from that is to leave salary on the table. You can do that by having 600 remainder. I mean, I know you can get up to Zach Ertz here if you wanted to double, and if you instead wanted to single with Zach Ertz instead of Debo, then go back to Drake London as your bring back. That's 400 remainder. You have an ideal defense, not a nervous punt defense. Zach Ertz as a single, James Cook, 2 rookie running backs that I really like. And if you don't like Travion Henderson, guess what? That's enough for Cam Scatterboo. That's enough for Quinshon Judkins. So I think that's a pretty fun line. Correlated bringbacks with or correlation with Egbuka and AJ Brown in a fun total and game environment. So yeah, that's a fun one. Let's see. Kyle Singer, what is up, guy? Full PPR, Shakir, Godwin, Romeo Dobbs, pick 2. I would probably rock with Khalil Shakir and Romeo Dobbs. I just don't trust Chris Godwin first game back today to have a significant. I think he's kind of touchdown or bust, if I'm going to be honest with you. So if he has, 3 for 40 in the score and he gets you 13, and that's the most out of that group, I apologize, but I just trust the other 2 more. I think it's more of a wait and see for me with Chris Godwin today. And then Ezekiel says he has Prater, but it's his last week. Should he pick up Kaimi Fairbairn or Chase? I'm assuming that's Chase McLaughlin. Um, Man, I'm gonna be honest. Kickers, it is completely volatile. I don't know who's gonna have 3 field goals and who's gonna have 0. Sometimes there's like last week, or at least on the showdown, Emery's play of the day was 2 weeks ago was a kicker, and then he missed his first field goal, and they were only scoring touchdowns, and he only got to 8 because he kicked a 55-yarder to ice the game at the end after Miami missed an onside kick, if I remember correctly. So it's just one of those things. I don't really know. If you had to have me pick blind, I would probably say Fairbairn because I know he's capable of having multiple field goals, and Houston's offense staggers a ton. Don't really trust them, so sure, I would say that it would be my answer. All right, so M says Minnesota blocked a field goal, got a field goal right before their half, 14-6. That helps me considering I went with Will Reichard. But the problem is TJ Hawkinson has 0 for 0 for 0 through halftime. He needs to get to 38 yards so I can be happy and finish the last leg of my underdog line that I sent you guys on, I believe it was a Wednesday or Thursday. Last leg in, and if that is how it ends, I'm going to be pretty sad because I had a lot of those last week where I just needed the last leg to hit, and I was about 5 yards short on like 3 different guys. So, anyways, before we do get out of the early only, is there anybody specifically that you guys want to build with? I know we did a Herbert. I know we did a Marcus Mariota. Those are probably my 2 favorite plays. I could get behind a Michael Penix one just because of the low ownership. But yeah, I'll give you like a minute or two if you wanted to get a look specifically with somebody that I haven't mentioned yet. Because I mean, like Jalen Hurts, I'm going to build a quick Jalen Hurts, just kind of speed build, just because it's a good game environment, good play. If Jalen Hurts does how he normally does, single stacking is okay. I'm going to double stack just because I like the pricing still of AJ and Devontae. So, and they both worked out last week combining for about, what was that, 45? So about averaging about 23 per person. Obviously, you probably need a cheat defense with going all the way up at quarterback. That leaves me with Omari and Hampton. Let's bring back with Kim Scatterboo. And then you got 55 still left. So you can put in Zach Ertz. That's not enough for Mr. James Cook, but that is enough for a lot of people in the 6K range. Like I said, it's tight end's interesting on the early only because there's nobody to spend up for. Obviously, a lot of people want to play Zach Ertz. People are going to play Juwan Johnson. Hunter Henry just is going to. I'm going to be wrong no matter what. Like I said earlier, if I had Kyle Pitts, that's enough for Nico or James Cook. Or let's see. What else can we do? So if we went Ertz and we wanted to correlate a little bit, can we get up to Bijan? Can we? I don't know if we can in this build. I don't think so, unless you went less than 4,000 receiver or double tight end for what it's worth. I didn't mention it, but Darnell Mooney, same game environment that Drake London is in. His first game back was kind of not a great game. I can't talk. Not a great game script for him, but also first game back last week was not effective, but had the most targets on the team in a 30-0 blowout. So 4,700 is a reasonable price if he builds off of the opportunity share he had last week. Early only there, it's pretty ugly down low. So if you wanted to double punt to try to get up to an expensive running back, I think probably double tight end is your friend. Plus, it gets you a little different. Let's see. Let's go off of, or I could just go up to a more expensive defense. So, because I think if my math is mathing, yeah, that's enough for Drake London at the flex to correlate with Zach Ertz. And so you got Houston's defense, probably my favorite And then you got the double stack bring back with the entire receiver room correlation there as well. So that's fun. That's a fun one for a Philly build. M asks, are you willing to play Jackson Dart based on his price, knowing neighbors could be a skinny? Um, I understand it, but 4,500, pretty reasonable price. I don't think this is a good matchup for him. Um, I know they can play from behind and he can salvage, but I just think you can find a way to get 500, 600 more, especially on the main slate. But just this early on the slate, there was so many options we could find to just get up to what we know is a 20-point upside with Marcus Mariota. What we know can be a 20+ point upside with Penix if he gets his head out of his ass and stops playing bad. The second game, they just made him be a game manager, and then last week it was truly an awful game that hopefully he can wipe away. But he had 24 fantasy points and almost had even 3 more, 2 yards short of the bonus on week 1. So as a home favorite, I'd probably prefer both of those guys and trying to find $600 instead of Jackson Dart. But if you want to go there and you think all 3 of them are 15-point or lower, like that does save you money to get wherever you want. I just don't think today I'm going to do that because I prefer the other guys in better spots. All right. So it is 10 on the dot. So I'm going to say let's jump over to afternoon only. Um, let's go back to the lobby. And then, like I said, it is 10 o'clock. I'll probably be on here for another hour. If you do have any start sit questions, concerns, we'll probably spend a couple minutes on this. And then we'll jump into some main talk again. And then we'll bring up the showdown. Not the show. We won't talk to showdown tonight. But we'll talk about the 3-gamer primetime because we got 2 Monday games. And honestly, the Monday games are so fun. On top of that, tonight, make what you will about Micah's revenge game against Dallas. But the 2 tomorrow is really, really fun between Denver, Cincinnati, Miami, and the Jets. Both have been awful defenses. So that could be a fun, just pukey slate. A lot of good running backs and good options or in good spots as well. So I wanted to, talk about that, but kind of going with what we typically do. Let's go afternoon only. Yeah. So, like I mentioned previously at the start of the stream, Mac Jones was very serviceable in his 2 starts, but Brock Purdy is going to give it a go today against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And with that said, I don't think many people are going to be on playing him first game back. I'm not necessarily concerned because he's not known for being a mobile quarterback. But the thing is, his price never went down. He's 6,100. He's more expensive than Patrick Mahomes, who's had multiple 23+ point games without receivers, and he's got his own receiver, Xavier Worthy, back today. Caleb Williams is the 5th most expensive quarterback. A lot of people are going to be playing this highest total game. I saw Stochastic when I was watching some streams coming in that a lot of people are high on Stafford doubles, which you have to double when you play Matthew Stafford. But you got a Devontae Adams. He's banged up. I don't really know if anyone excites me more than Caleb Williams today. I understand the fight to get up to Lamar. The thing is because he's been 26 points every single game so far, and whether it's a good game script, a bad game script, or trailing from behind, he finds ways to get there because he's one of the best quarterbacks in football and one of the best fantasy quarterbacks we've seen in some time. But Caleb Williams has been as steady as they come. 2 games with at least 24 fantasy points. This 18 modest one, he probably would have got to that 300-yard bonus had he not gotten pulled because they lost by 30, and they ended up pulling him in the fourth, like at the early start of the fourth quarter. So very well could have got there, but he's been strong. As a fantasy quarterback, we can make debates and ranks all day of how he's performed in terms of tiers of real life quarterback play. But fantasy wise, he's been as I anticipated he would be. And then this could allegedly be his best matchup to date. That is saying a lot because of how bad Dallas is defensively at this very moment in time. But the Raiders, we saw Marcus Mariota put up 20 against them. Drake May throw for a ton in a bad game script. He didn't have a great game, but he did have a lot of fantasy production from that game. And then Justin Herbert in an ugly game just got there with the typical 20 he's gotten so far this season. But this is a true pick 'em. Everybody's still cheap. And I think that's going to be heavily influencing a lot of my builds today is this game environment. So we're definitely going to start with the Caleb build, but let's see. Let's see. I mean, honestly, there's not really a quarterback that I hate today, at least on this afternoon slate. Everybody you could really make an argument for. Probably if I had to say who's my least favorite, it's probably Brock Purdy, just because of and it's not even that he has bad stacking options because Christian McCaffrey is getting 15 targets in games that are good environments now. Ricky Pearsall, 2 games having over 100 yards so far. Juwan Jennings in the other game went off. So he has stackable options, but Daniel Jones has been steady. Trevor Lawrence, probably not a great play. So, but at the same time, he's going to be the lowest owned and he's the cheapest. So if you play a bunch of lines, I understand the fight you want to sprinkle in some Jacksonville. I think today, in terms of quarterbacks, let me filter this out in terms of ownership. Yeah, Trevor least owned on the afternoon slate, less than 3% owned on the full slate. There's only 6 quarterbacks that are lower owned than him. And on top of that, because of Travis Hunter starting out so slow, Brian Thomas starting out so slow, like everybody that is a Jacksonville Jaguar as a skill player, except for Travis Etienne, is less than 10% owned. And if you take out Etienne and Strange, which just leaves the receivers, De'Ami Brown is actually the most popular receiver at 3.2%. And then you got Brian Thomas, and then nobody's obviously going to play Travis Hunter. So if this is the day that they just kind of go out of nowhere and pop off, nobody's going to be duplicating your line. So that's why I don't hate him. He probably has the worst matchup of the bunch. But I see where your crazy head would be at if you wanted to go with some Jacksonville doubles. So Geno Smith, lights out 2 of the 3 games with over 20 fantasy points. His price has barely moved, and now he's at home as a slight favorite against Chicago, who has been susceptible to the pass. Number 1 corner is also out. So obviously 3rd worst against quarterback so far. Man, honestly, this is a pretty deep quarterback slate for a 4-gamer. Mahomes, I mentioned. Daniel Jones, a lot of people are going to be playing indie players. Alec Pierce is out, so that kind of dilutes a little bit of the unknown at receiver, and everybody's still cheap. A lot of people probably going to still flock to Jonathan Taylor having back-to-back 30-point weeks. He looks like he's showing about 15% ownership so far on the main slate, so he'll probably be north of 25 to possibly 30 on the slate. Way less running backs to think about too. So if you wanted the indie double, or think about some indie pass catchers, really, Tyler Warren, I love him today. Obviously, he's the thumbnail, so there's a reason behind it. But he has not caught his touchdown yet. He had an okay game and a bad game script for him. But each of the first 2 weeks, at least 8 opportunities in both games, at least 11 fantasy points in both games. And, at some point he's going to score touchdowns because that's what he did a lot in his senior year. Josh Downs, fun buy low opportunity. Let me pull up the snap counts for Indy because I'm interested to see what they have been. I mean, honestly, not really what you want to see. But Alec Pierce, his first 2 weeks, 79% of the snaps, and then 90% of the snaps. Last week was getting most of them as well until he went down, was concussed on a deep ball. Josh Downs is going to inherit most of those snaps. But at the same time, also, A.D. Mitchell, who we've been just waiting to have him get on the field and have opportunities, had a really good camp in preseason. He's 3,100, basically minimum price as a receiver. So if you were trying to afford some big names up top, I get the reason getting behind it. So because of the ownership of Jonathan Taylor and possibly the Colts playing from behind and everybody's modestly priced, I see myself interested in some indie doubles as well. So, yeah. I'm going to start off going with the Caleb build, though. as a double. Once again, we're doing the afternoon only slate for the time being. We're about to go over to the main in a little bit, but I want to do a Chicago double and figure it out from there. Puka Nakua, obviously a thumbnail because he's been the man. At least, what is that, averaging 13 opportunities so far. On top of that, Devontae Adams kind of limited with the hamstring all week, so high risk of re-injury. But Puka, 25 points at least in each of the first 3 weeks. He's been the most matchup-proof receiver so far, wide receiver 1 through 3 weeks. So, yeah, he is as advertised. On top of that, you have Kenny Moore being out a couple weeks. He aggravated I think a groin injury, if I remember correctly. But Puka, 2 games with the 100-yard bonus. The one game he didn't, he was 9 yards short, but still had a 45-yard rushing touchdown. Safe as they come. If it's afternoon only, if I'm playing any kind of lines, he is going to be in that line. But I just want to let you know that he's one of our favorite plays of the day. But at the same time, I can see myself getting into some Kyron today because I think a lot of people are going to want to go to the not the Indy pass catchers, the Rams pass catchers. 2 of the 3 highest owned receivers on the entire main slate today, unless ownership has changed, which it has not. Puka Nakua, Devontae Adams combining for about 45% ownership right now. And I know some of that is probably, within the same line. I just did a refresh and nothing's changed so far. So, yeah, I mean that's just how crazy the ownership is on those guys. So pivoting, going to a Kyron Williams, I think is an interesting way to go about things. 6,300 is pretty reasonable price. But Puka Nakua, at least on the afternoon slate, I'm gonna have a hard time getting away from. Tight end wise, it's kind of interesting because there's at least a couple of interesting names up top. The 2 highest priced on the main slate today is Kelsey and Bowers. And Bowers banged up, kind of couple duds the last couple of weeks. And in game environments that you would have thought he would produce, but he's also tweaked his knee. I think he's done with a PCL sprain, if I remember correctly. So 58, starting to kind of get cheaper. I don't know if this is the week to buy low on it. I don't know if you need to go that high up at tight end. Kelsey, without multiple guys, I think he's a fantastic 3rd or 4th option. And once Rasheed is back and Xavier Worthy is healthy, if he's just going to be single covered over the middle and he at that point probably flocks to the low to mid 4K range, I think he'll have some fun weeks. But for the time being, I'm not thinking I want to get there, especially when Tyler Warren is $200 cheaper. I believe in him a little bit more. Take a little. But yeah, and on top of that, both thumbnails got to go in the video or got to go in the lineup, right? So defense, no idea what to do. They're all within $700 of each other. Somebody's probably going to have a defensive touchdown. I don't know who it is. Probably the game that you probably at least want to play is the defense that I want to get behind. High total game. Don't really want either defense there. Highest total on the slate is the Rams and the Colts, but at the same time, I could see the Rams at $2,900, kind of humbling the Colts a little bit and running away with it. Jacksonville has been kind of steady. I think at least 8 points in all 3 games so far. They're the lowest on the slate. Emery's actually picking them outright today. So if this is an Emery build, he might even go with Jacksonville. What's up, Chivalry King? Happy Sunday to you. DJ Moore or Trey Tucker is the question. Standard. Who I think people are going to be a little bit, I don't believe in Trey Tucker as a steady standalone play, flex play week in and week out. I think he had a boom game, and I think a lot of people are going to be tricked on it. DJ Moore has not had his boom game, but is in a great game environment. Actually, they're playing against each other, so they're both in good spots. But I probably would side with DJ Moore for the floor. Trey Tucker, let me pull him up real quick. What is his price? He is still 42. So, yeah, he had a 43-point game, but the week before he had 4.9. Fun that he's had at least 9 targets in both games, though. maybe I'm not giving him enough credit as a potential, week in and week out flex play. But for the time being, I would just side with DJ Moore, in my opinion. And then Emery did mention, I missed his comment, but AD will be in a couple of his lines. Would like to see an indie build with AD and Warren. Oh, that'll be fun. I'll do that one after this Caleb build. So, but getting back, let's put a button on this one. Rome Odunze, his price keeps going up. He was my stand on during best ball season. Was my most exposed player, drafted in the top 100, and he has caught a touchdown every single game. 4 touchdowns through 3 weeks. Last week, he didn't really have the boom that you thought because that 45-yard touchdown came early, and then after that, it was kind of explosive plays that were the culprit of taking down Dallas the way they did. It wasn't just long sustaining drives, which is I think where his bread and butter will be this year. But Raiders bottom 3 against receivers, $6,300, and shockingly, nobody is really playing Chicago skill players today. DJ Moore is 10%. He's actually the highest owned, but Rome being 8%, still modestly priced. I think there's some spots and players that have risen so much, like Emeka Ibuka I mentioned recently, that are still in good spots, good opportunities, but they're just like, that just seems expensive for this name. But it's a new season, and I think he's there to stay, and he'll be in the low to mid 6K range throughout the majority of the season this year. I'm going to miss, high 4K Rome Odunze, low 5K Rome Odunze. He's obviously going to be in any build that I have with Caleb Williams. And then the decision is, do you want to double with a DJ Moore, who's 56? Do you want to double with DeAndre Swift? Probably not my preference. He was supposed to be a game time decision, but it looks like he's more than likely going to suit up today. And then also worth mentioning that Colston Loveland will likely not play. He's not expected to play with a hip injury today. So Cole Kmet being 3,000. If you don't want to play a Tyler Warren and you want to punt it tight end, I understand it. He caught a touchdown last week. The thing is, even though he's been dominating the snap share for the most part, pulling up Chicago snap share right now. Yeah, he's been at least 90% of the snaps all 3 games this year, and is still not really getting a ton of targets. Had only 1 catch in week 1, and then weeks 2 and 3 combined for 3 targets, despite having 90% of the snaps. So it's not like Colston Loveland being out is just going to make him a 7-8 target a game guy until further notice. So, but the price is just what it is. I would say let's go ahead and go with DJ Moore. And then the question is with the Raiders, who do you bring back? Because everybody and their mom is going to be playing Jacoby Myers today. He's the second highest owned receiver on the entire slate. And so on the main slate, or actually the 2 guys he's sandwiched in between are Puka and Devontae Adams. So they're all on this slate, on this afternoon slate. Him being 5,400 is the most reasonably priced. If you're wanting to get different, I think it's probably better to go away from him on certain lines. I think I'll still be at the field or overweight to him today, but at the same time, I'm not really interested in just jamming him in every single line, because last week he started out strong and then he just did not get targeted the rest of the game in a positive game scripted environment. Trey Tucker, 43-point game, caught all 3 touchdowns. So that doesn't mean Jacoby can't go off today. He's had 22 targets for the first 2 weeks. That's why he's a lot of people's favorite flex play today, or one of the favorite Raiders. But at the same time, I mentioned how ugly the running back slate is on the afternoon. And you got to get all the way up to 85 for Christian McCaffrey, or 75 for JT, playing the number 1 ranked defense against running back so far. Derrick Henry, can he go 4 for 4 with lost fumbles? His has been concerning because, again, he had a great game script in week 1, but he had a good game script in week 2, and he just did not produce. Only 11 for 23, did not score, and he was not chalky, but he had some ownership last week. Literally, this touchdown was the only thing that saved him. But again, Detroit's pretty solid against running backs as well. So Kansas City, though, kind of a similar thing. They're middle of the pack so far, But last year, I think they were top 5 against running backs as well. So I think Ashton Jeanty might be the guy. I want to know, Emery, as a Raiders fan, what he thinks about that. But I think the fact that nobody's really on him today, about 7% owned in probably his best matchup of the year. I mean, he started out against New England, got bottled up pretty well. He actually has more yards after contact than he does total yards this year. That's pretty insane to think about. Um, but at the same time, he hasn't really gotten going. Hasn't really been in a receiver threat either. And on top of that, bad game scripts against the Chargers, against the Commanders, really what did him in on those games. And because of his back-to-back games under 7.5, season low price tag, 6,200, not much ownership. And on a slate where the running back's kind of gross, I'm not against it. That's why I'm flirting with the idea. What is up, Dusty? Congratulations to your Texas A&M Aggies taking down Auburn yesterday. Hung on. I know I was watching the end of the LSU Ole Miss game, so I missed the final result, but they were ahead and kind of stayed ahead throughout the game. But anyhow, in terms of finishing up this line, kind of weird way to go. Because there's not a running back that really stands out to me. I like Kyron. That puts you with 2 Rams. You can do that on slates like these, but that leaves you $4,800. That's Rashad Bateman. That's Luther Burden. That's a bunch of gross, It is gross. I think another name, haven't really talked a ton about him, but Michael Pittman's been the most steady receiver for Indy. So I know M said he wanted to do a Warren and Mitchell double in a second. But 20 and 19 through 3 weeks, pretty solid as a wide receiver 5 or 6, depending on where you drafted him in best ball, if you did. Let's see. That's tough. And even though I did say I didn't want DeAndre Swift earlier, because there's just way more options at receiver, I think I'd kind of rather just kind of go that route. Because it just fills a running back hole, and it's scary. I don't trust it at all. But I like Ricky Pearsall, getting to him, even though he has a cute tag, he's going to play. There was never concern that it wouldn't. Even though Juwan Jennings is back, I still like him today. Not nearly as high owned as they thought he'd be. On the main slate, at least, he's showing, 8% owned for a 3 o'clock game. I think that's pretty fun. But that leaves you enough for if you wanted to triple. That sounds crazy. But also Jacoby Myers, last guy in. I mean, going double Raider, but I love that game. So I understand it if you wanted to do that. Double Indy, kind of a similar thing. That's probably my least favorite name on the 5K range. Yeah. Let's say last guy in is Jacoby Myers. So you get a double stack with a running back instead of a receiver, and then a double bring back with Ashton Jeanty, Jacoby Myers, 200 salary remainder, and you get that going. So that's a fun build. But let's go ahead and go to a double. I think Emery a little bit ago said, let's see. Yeah, he said Indy build, double stack bring back with Daniel Jones and AD Mitchell. That is the difference maker, and that's why you can go the chalky route. So $5,600 Daniel Jones, save a couple of dollars, a couple hundred on at quarterback, and then we're saving a lot. That'll help us a lot with that last guy in decision. Going with Warren. Let's do, and then to not make him upset because he's OCD, let's go Puka first, and then we'll go AD Mitchell down here. And now, running back wise, I want to see if we can get all the way up to Christian McCaffrey in this build. I know I'm just going to put cheap defense in. It's kind of a wash. I don't really have a confidence in many of them, but even if I do like the Rams defense, probably if price didn't matter, I'm not playing them against a double stack Indy because obviously that doesn't correlate too well. Let's see. You could do double bring back with Kyron. I know M said choosing between Genty, Bowers, Jacoby, and Tucker is tough. If he had to rank, he would go Jacoby, Genty, Tucker, Bowers. He doesn't feel good. I probably am lockstep with you on that based on price. If it's a raw points, I think Jacoby and Genty are kind of a wash, and then Tucker with Jacoby probably having the more upside, I would say. And then Tucker, based on being, excuse me, 4,200, that's a value, and that can't really be ignored. And then Bowers, I know it's 58 at tight end, but because of going with Warren, that means you have to double stack tight end, and that means that he's a flex play. And if you had to do a flex play between Bowers, Worthy, Pearsall, Moore, I don't know if I would rank him in the top 2 of my consideration for those guys. So it's just one of those things. So I'm gonna put Genty back in on this one though, because running back's gross. And if I had to pivot and you didn't want to do that, actually, you know what? Let's go with a double bring back with Kyron and him. Leave Genty out. You got Jacoby Myers 54, 6,100 remainder. Could be a buy low for Brian Thomas. You could say welcome back Xavier Worthy 5,800. I don't think a ton of people will be on him today because of his risk of injury and him being, like a slim reaper. If you want to leave some salary, don't really want to do a Jags defense against 2 49ers. But yeah, you can do some things. 6,200, I think that's enough for Devontae. So if you trust Devontae today, I don't have Rome in here though. I want some Rome, but I can't get to him. Even if I go down 1 to Genty here. I guess if you wanted to, you could go that triple. No, can't do that. Let's say, I guess we'll have to leave Rome out of this build. It just doesn't work, man. Does not work. But maybe to put some Chicago in there, you put in DJ Moore and Jacob Myers. That's 500 extra that you can basically afford every defense except for San Francisco. It's not like they've been lights out either. I mean, very modest 5 last week as well. So they're not really producing a ton in terms of takeaways like they used to. Sack production is not there, so I don't think you need to get up there. With this specific build, it's probably a Chiefs or Ravens, whoever your preference is on the winner. Because this is an Emery line and he picked the Ravens outright today, I would say let's go Ravens. That leaves you 300, even though the Ravens, you've been negative twice, but then you had 15. So hopefully you meet in the middle and you get about 8 and just be happy with it. But I think that makes the most sense. Let's say, so you got 300 remainder. I mean, I'm fine with that, I think, right? What do you think, Em? 54. Put Jacoby over there. 54, 5,900, just so you can see all the positions. So if you wanted to do Brock Bowers, you could. Don't necessarily want to in this build. But again, once again, you can go with both San Francisco guys, fade Chicago as a whole, or do what you will. It's not like going to Genty really opens up anything. I think no. If we were back at like if you're a Devontae Adams believer, right? You could go with back to Jacksonville. That leaves you enough for Devontae. So you double ring back with the 2 Rams receivers with A.D. Mitchell, Tyler Warren, and then basically Jacoby Myers naked, but also second Raider. Again, when it's a 4-game slate, you don't really have to make a ton of rules and stuff like that. You can try to do the framework of it, but at the end of the day, you're just gonna, some of these last couple are just gonna be best guys available. I really wish I could get to Rome with that $100. Let's see if we can do one without Ooh, well, I know you did say AD Mitchell, but this is fun. So instead of going up to CMC, you double solid 6K low price 6K running back. You still got Puka in there, Jacoby Myers, Rome as correlation, and then your double is Pittman and Warren instead of AD and Warren, and that leaves you $100 exactly. You're fading all 49ers. That's kind of scary, but if you're not a Chicago believer, then you can go to back to Pearsall. That leaves you 700. So that's any defense you want. Um, but I don't care about leaving salary on the table on a 4-game slate. Um, if you wanted to, let's see, I guess if you wanted to fade Puka, you could afford CMC with this possibility. I don't want to do that personally, though. I think Puka is the best play on the slate overall today. But yeah, I think that's fun. Put back in Rome just so you can look one more time. I think that's a pretty fun indie double. I know you did say AD Mitchell like to get different, but I think that's pretty fun. All right. So it's just about 10:30. I'd say let's jump over to main once again. Give you a couple looks and then do a quick breakdown of the showdown. And I got to build some lines as well myself. So um, yeah, because I've got like I did say on the early look that I wasn't going to do 20 lines, and I ended up having way too much time on my hands yesterday. So I'm playing 20 lines again today. So got to figure that out, manipulate some ownership. So favorite quarterback to build with today. I did go through a ton. I know Caleb Williams is one that I want to bring up at some point. But if you guys have a preference on a quarterback that you'd like to build with, let me know. I'll give y'all a couple seconds to tell me about it. And Emery did say, forgot to ask about Oronde Gadsden. Um, tough name today. What is his price? Let me see. I actually haven't even really considered him a ton. He's 2,600. That's cheap. That is cheap. He is showing about 5.7, so probably north of 6% ownership today. So that I'm assuming that would be one of the 5 or 6 highest owned tight ends. While I do say once again, if you guys have a preference on quarterback to build with, just let me know. I'm going to go through some of the highest owned plays at each position. So top five at each for the main slate. Let me do a quick refresh. And also 10:30 is when the inactive list comes out. I don't think we were really waiting on anything. Why is Baker have a Q tag? Right biceps. Okay. Guess that was kind of a late markup. But in terms of news we were waiting on, we weren't really waiting on a ton because like the Q tags here, Devontae, Chuba, Godwin, McMillan, all expected to play Pearsall as well. Terry McLaurin we knew was out. DeAndre Swift, Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt should play. Tracy has been ruled out. Juwan Jennings is going to play. So we knew Pierce was out. So there wasn't anything we're really waiting on at 10:30. But if there's a surprise inactive, y'all let me know in the chat. But yeah, I know him said that he has a 23 and a half receiving line on Prize Picks. That is interesting. That's pretty high for a $2,600 player though. So the problem is that if you're not doing a Justin Herbert build, I don't know because of the value everywhere, and the only one that's not a value is Lad, but he's the lowest owned of the bunch. I don't know if you need to get that low today, but I understand it if you wanted to go that route. But the thing is, it's already hard enough to figure out which of the receivers is going to work out. So picking the right receiver out of the 3 and then pairing them with Gadsden is tough. But I'll build a look in a little bit with Gadsden to just see what we can do with it. But like I said, let me go through some of the highest owned plays on the slate today. So just did a refresh on ownership. Quarterback wise, highest owned quarterback on the slate for the second straight slate is going to be Marcus Mariota. Everybody right now showing below 10%. I would expect a couple of them to creep up in like lower tournaments. But Marcus Mariota Josh Allen, 2 highest owned, followed by Lamar, Caleb Williams, Daniel Jones. Those are the 5 highest owned quarterbacks. In terms of highest leverage, it's Marcus Mariota once again. Um, Justin Herbert's up there as well. Jalen Hurts. The tough thing is all these guys showing positive leverage. You don't really know who you're going to stack with. Like Marcus Mariota can get there naked. Jalen Hurts can get there naked. Justin Herbert won't get there naked, but I don't have confidence in just nailing the 2 guys. You're just going to get lucky. Patrick Mahomes, don't know what to do with his stacking options. Daniel Jones, it's probably Tyler Warren and Michael Pittman. But like Emery said, because of the price point on A.D. Mitchell, I understand going that low on him. Drake May, it's been different guys every single week. And then obviously Lamar, you would think it'd be Zay Flowers, but then on a game when they're popping off, playing from behind, he has less than 6 fantasy points. So he's still volatile, even though he had a really strong first 2 weeks. So running back wise, highest owned. Christian McCaffrey, highest owned guy on the entire slate today. So 30% owned, and he's the most expensive. That's tough to get to. James Cook following up at 19.6. Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams actually rounding out the top 5. I'm actually surprised Kyron is in the top 5 highest owned running backs. I thought at least one of the rookies between Omarion Hampton and Cam Skyboo would creep into that top 5, but that's not what it's showing right now. Highest leverage is Bijan, less than 10% owned, 8,200. So people that are not really confident in Christian McCaffrey going off, saving $300, saving more than a third of the ownership, I think is a fun way to go. Cam Skyboo, Bucky Irving, Chuba Hubbard, Jonathan Taylor, kind of rounding at the top 5 in terms of positive leverage as well. Now let's go to receiver. Puka Nacua, far and away the number 1 option today. He is 29% owned, but showing positive leverage. That is incredible. You don't really see it that often, but he will be in a ton of my lines today. I mentioned earlier, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams right next to him, right behind. Zay Flowers showing just about 12% owned. Pretty surprised that people are playing him that much based on the dud he had last week. And then Trey Tucker rounding out the top 5. So him and his big game, chasing big games is not something that I love taking a part of. I know his opportunity has been there. I know his snap share has been there, but being a top 5 owned receiver is not something that I'm really interested in because of the Jacoby love I have today, and then my different Raider is going to be Ashton TNT. Highest leverage guys, Chris Olave once again showing high leverage, but I just don't know what to do with him. He actually leads the NFL in targets and just has done nothing with it. Malik Neighbors next up. Deebo Samuel, surprisingly low ownership for Terry McLaurin being out, only 7% owned. So showing some positive leverage there. Jacoby Myers still showing positive leverage despite being over 20% owned. And then Ted McMillan, Amon-Ra St. Brown, next 2 guys on that list. And then rounding out that area tied for Amon-Ra St. Brown with positive leverage is Emeka Egbuka, showing 5% ownership. That's what I'm talking about on the surprise of how high owned, or how low owned rather, he is with Mike Evans being out, Chris Godwin returning. I just think that he's a very safe 14 to 15 today. I don't know if he has access to that 100-yard bonus upside, but we saw Puka do it. We saw Devontae Adams get there last week, I believe. So, yeah, I think that's fun. Tight end wise, highest is the thumbnail for this video. So Tyler Warren showing as the highest owned, but still really positive leverage. Dalton Kincaid, second highest owned. Once again, chasing big games and recent big games. Not one of the worst leverage plays in terms of the position. Hunter Henry, 10% owned. So he's high owned. Trying to get him right. Again, I don't care what I do with him. I'm just going to be wrong, and I just have to deal with it. So Brenton Strange, 4th. Very reasonable price at 3,200. I think he had 6 for 61 last week. Let me pull up him because I got to scroll down to get him. Brenton Strange, 12.1 fantasy points, 7 targets, 6 for 61. He's been one of the more steady options because Brian Thomas is not playing well right now, and then they have not unleashed Travis Hunter yet. So I understand that. And then last but not least is Zach Ertz, showing pretty solid leverage, just under 10% owned. Probably the most popular of the Commanders today in a good game environment. So, yeah, that is the highest rostered. And I see no comments in terms of preferred quarterback. So we're going to start out with my preference. And we're going to go with a um, Caleb Williams build. So we're going to start out, go with Caleb. And we're going to do a double. Honestly, I think because of the value at receiver, I might be intrigued by a single stack with Caleb just because I think I feel better about some other options in the 5K range. I talked about Drake London, Ricky Pearsall. Both of the Charger receivers are there. Jacoby Myers is there. He might be going to my line in a second. Devontae Smith. You got DJ Moore. Hasn't had a boom game. Last week he finally scored, but that's what salvaged his day. Otherwise, he would have had a less than 10 fantasy point score for the third straight week to start the year. Um, but yeah, let's go with Jacoby. I'm going to go ahead and plug in Omar and Hampton. Really like him today. Let's see if we can get Puka in here. So we'll go Tyler Warren. We'll go Puka. We'll go all the way down to defense. Tennessee is just going to naturally fall in. 6,200. Boom. I know that would be 2 Raiders. So maybe you get different elsewhere and you go with, let's see. If you went Genty here, you got $5,400. That's enough for if you wanted to double bring back Michael Pittman Jr. If you wanted to do a second Charger receiver, wanted to go with Devontae Smith, who might be low owned as a standalone play. I don't know. Let's see. I know I put Genty in there. I will have some Genty today, but let's see if we can do even more fun things. And this is what I'm going to say about, like, excuse me, like being able to get there to other guys and other spots. Like Deebo Samuel as a standalone guy in, apparently low owned but really high leverage play. You get the correlation with both rookie running backs in the same game environment, both under 6K. You get Puka, popular play, 300 remainder, correlated with Tyler Warren, single skinny stack with Deebo Samuel, and then a single stack of Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. I know it is scary to do single stacks, but that looks really solid. And like I said, balanced build, I think, is the way to go this week. That's how I'm going to be building most of my lines, is going the cheap defense, mid-price quarterback, and trying to single or double them. I don't want to really go double high, double low, because the value is not really there anymore to go like minimum price or low price receiver that you feel great about. Or, I mean, most of these mid-price tight ends, good spots. We mentioned Juwan Johnson. Sam Laporta is really cheap. I understand if you want to go that route. Dalton Kincaid being the second highest owned, I hate that, but he's there. In this specific build, you could afford Travis Kelce if you wanted to. So yeah, that's fun. But let's go ahead, because he mentioned his name earlier. Let's do a double stack with the tight end Emery mentioned that's really, really cheap. So we're going to go Justin Herbert. I'm going to pick this guy. I'm going to say because he's the lowest owned and you're going to be able to afford whatever you want because of the cheap tight end, I'm going to go with Ladd. And if we need to go down, we can save $1,000 later. But Oronde. Yeah, the Gale said Komet is sneaky today. I agree. All 3 games so far, 90% of the snaps or more. The problem is just he's not really getting targets. So I will sprinkle some Cole Komet. I don't think you have to get that crazy to get overweight to him. Right now, he's showing as 3% owned, positive leverage, but 1 out of 20 lines is going to be overweight. So I wouldn't say any more than I was looking at the wrong guy, actually. Cole Komet's 4.1%, showing negative leverage. I was looking at Chika Okonkwo. Not projecting great, but I understand going that route. It's really easy to get overweight, and I might sprinkle in a line or two. But with this specific one, we're already different here. And we're going to just add Puka back in there. I have to do that. Let's see. I don't know if we need to, but again, Travion Henderson, I wanted to mention and bring up. I think this could be a breakout game to where he finally gets his first career touchdown. Not saying that he has multi-touchdown, 100-plus yard upside, but the matchups there, they're at home. and he's the only one that doesn't have fumble problems. So, reasonable guy, and you can afford whatever you want going forward if you go with that specific route. Let's see. So if I had at receiver going Jacoby Myers in this build, that's 6,900 per. You can kind of go in a lot of ways. James Cook's going to be really popular. That leaves you 67. It's kind of gross. That's enough for AJ Brown, Zay Flowers, who's pulling ownership, Rome, leave some salary on the table, Genty. Or we could go more balanced. Go 3. Let's see. Actually, because we have a cheap tight end, I want to see if we can go double expensive guy. I think a lot of people are going to go Puka or Christian. I don't think they're going to go both. And on top of that, because we're doing the we might have to go cheaper at receiver in a second. But yeah, let's go ahead and go down. I'm going to say let's go Keenan. 5,900 per. You do a lot of fun things. So if you wanted to correlate a fun game, Drake London, Deebo Samuel, last 2 in, you could do that. You could go with a stack of Ashton Genty. No, not Genty. I'm sorry. You go with Jacoby Myers, and then that leaves you enough for Rome. Right there. That's fun as well. I know I didn't do a bring back with Kim Scattaboo, but I mean, to each of their own. Like this is all fun. I don't think you necessarily need to in a team that is a 6.5 point home dog. Need to go there. Kim Scattaboo's projecting well, but he's going to be owned. So I think if I wanted to be different, you're already different enough going Gadsden. But going Malik Neighbors, I think, is really strong. He was one of the higher positive leverage scores. That would probably bring you down from Christian, easily afford you a James Cook. So you got the correlation there. Rome is a standalone play. If you didn't like Rome, you can keep Christian in there. That's 49. That's kind of gross. Rashad Bateman, maybe. You could do the pivot to Bijan, 5,200. That's also gross. Or you can let's just say we go with, I don't know. I can't just kind of stop clicking on these mid-tier guys. Go Genty. Put Neighbors back in receiver. That leaves you enough for a 3 running back build. James Cook. If you want to go up at defense, like I said, Houston, that either one of those people in that game is probably going to be most of my lines. But that leaves you enough for Deebo. That leaves you enough for if you wanted to triple stack. I don't recommend that, but Omarion. You got Worthy. You got London. But let's put a button on it, and we'll go with, let's do this. Double cheap running back. Bang, bang. Receiver-wise, don't know what I want. Let's go Rome. That's enough for Nico Collins as the last guy in. If you wanted to leave some salary on the table, I'm not against that because you already have expensive defense. So you got Malik Neighbors in there to correlate with that double for the Chargers. I think it's fun to leave some salary on the table. And then obviously that's enough to get up to a actually, I have 2 Giants in there. I do not want to do that. So I'd probably say Nico Collins is the preference. And if you didn't like, I think you have enough. If you, instead of wanted Keenan Allen, you go down from down to Tennessee from Houston. And that's right exactly enough for Lad as the double there as well. So fun stuff. You can do a lot of things today, which is, I think, pretty fun. And then Mariota, you are correct. And we should do a Mariota build. I'm going to do a skinny build. So as I set that up, I want you to tell me who you would rather skinny between Zach Ertz and Deebo Samuel for the Marcus Mariota build. Because I haven't put his name in yet, but I'm going to put it in Drake London as a bring back no matter what. But you can tell me Deebo or Zach Ertz. defense wise, I think a lot of the way that I'm building today is just go all the way down. If you can go up, you can. But if you don't, you don't have to. Omari and Hampton is going this line. And then Debo is his answer. So we're going to put in some Debo Samuel. Got some Drake London. Tight end wise, you got Tyler. You can get in Puka. 63 per. So the easy correlation, you got Ashton Genty. And at the flex, you can go with Rome. So that's fun. That actually might be one of my builds. Going with our favorite guy, our other thumbnail. You got one of our favorite game environments, buy low owned opportunity for Ashton Genty. Going with the number 1 and number 2 running back of this rookie class. Amarin will pull some ownership, but it is what it is. Drake London is going to be low owned. So apparently Debo Samuel's low owned. So even though it looks like it could be chalky, you have the most popular receiver, you have the most popular quarterback, you have one of the more popular running backs, but he's less than 8% owned. He's 6% owned. He's 7% owned. He's 6% owned. And then Tennessee, I think, actually is pulling some ownership. Let me see. Yeah, they're the third highest owned. But either way, you've got like 5 guys in this line that are less than 10% owned. So they're like, this feels very kind of not cash-like, but a similar build of what you would want to do that with like safe plays. And you're not really getting that crazy. If you didn't like that and you wanted to fade that game, you can go Cam Scatterboo, the other guy. And that leaves you enough room for James Cook. Or if you wanted to leave some salary on the board, you got Mecca Buka, another low-owned play. If you wanted higher-owned play, Zay Flowers. I think if I had to pick between the two, I would prefer Mecca Buka. That's just me, though. If you wanted your Charger play to not be Hampton, you go to Ladd. That's enough to get up to, once again, Genty. Yeah, I think that's fun. Marcus Mariota might be my second most owned quarterback today because, once again, even though he is the highest owned, there's a lot of ways to get different. Single stacking, this is the second highest owned Washington player, so getting different in that regard. Also, you don't have the chalky Jacoby Myers. You don't have the chalky Devontae Adams, Christian McCaffrey. So, yeah, you're getting different. All right. We got 10:51. I don't think we came across any last second injury news, but if I missed something, just let me know. Pittsburgh is whooping that butt, 21-6 going into the fourth. Looks like Carson Wentz has a couple picks. DK going off mostly because of that 80-yard touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell 2 touchdowns. What a pickup, Bailey. You got him in the flex, right? Or did you start him or did you just pick him up? Let me see what you did. Oh, no, he definitely started him. 23.8 fantasy points from a guy that he picked up this morning. What a call. All right. So last thing before we get out of here, quick 10-minute debrief. I wanted to bring up the primetime slate because I think it's really, really fun. Whether the thing is, you can play the 2-gamer that is the Monday only. You can play the 3-gamer that includes the Dallas and Green Bay game tonight. That game kind of scares me a lot from a fantasy perspective because I don't know what's going to happen. The only kind of confident play I would have from that is like Green Bay defense. If you think they'll just shit on Dallas in Micah's revenge game, or you can buy low on a Packer receiver. But other than that, I think Pickens will have more ownership than he deserves. Javonte Williams, it could be a negative game script. So even though he's cheap, look at all these great matchups for running backs. So Devon Achane might be my favorite play on the slate against the Jets at home. Really fun. He's basically a receiver at running back, and his price is just too low. Jacobs, I understand the play. Chase Brown, awful thus far, all because of his offensive line. I think he has not only what I mentioned with Genty having more yards after contact than he does total yards, but I think he's got negative 44 yards before contact. Or no. Yeah, before contact this year, negative 44 yards. Like that is bad. Like if you put up a sample size of like his rushing yards, like he has no breakaway runs, and every time he's just getting stuffed in the backfield. It's terrible. But at the same time, Denver, Omar and Hampton went off last week. The week before, Jonathan Taylor went up for 215. So it's a better matchup. And on top of that, because of his recent performances, he might be the lowest owned. J.K. Dobbins, great matchup, great game environment. He scored every single game. So he's one of the safer plays. But at the same time, Brees Hall, we saw what James Cook did against Miami last week. And the week before, they've basically been a funnel for any kind of fantasy production. One of the worst defenses in football right now. So he's had back-to-back duds, but he's $5,700. And if you don't believe in that, I mean, a low owned but great matchup, RJ Harvey, kind of tickles my fancy a little bit. Receiver wise, tough to get up to Jamar Chase. I mean, he had a dud. A lot of that had to do with them being down, 35 points. But obviously he's not there. And then if you fade him, your highest owner or highest priced receiver after that is a 6,500 Tyreek Hill. Garrett Wilson, another great guy in a great spot. He's had a great game with a Justin Fields. He's had a great game with Tyrod Taylor. So he kind of is quarterback proof, being one of the highest volume receivers so far this year. Justin Fields is back though. So I think it'll be fun. And then a lot of these guys are just highly volatile, don't know what to do with, but T. Higgins, 5,600 by low opportunity, but he has not played well at all, largely due to quarterback play. Jalen Waddle, will he catch a touchdown? If he doesn't, he might have less than 10. I don't know if I can give you a confident Green Bay receiver. Golden finally had some opportunity last week in the first game without Jaden Reed, but still only – well, he had 4 targets, 3 rushing attempts. So they're trying to get him the ball. He'll eventually have a breakout game. And if it's going to happen, it could be against the team that is 32nd against receivers. If not, if you don't believe in that, Romeo Dobbs, he's been on the field a lot, but he's had a up and down game. This game, he scored that touchdown early and then didn't do anything after that. Dontavian Wicks is the other guy, also hasn't gone off. Tucker Kraft is probably the safest Packer as a pass catcher, and he's injured right now. Had a dud last week. Jake Ferguson, look at these targets. 14 targets, 12 targets each of the last 2 weeks. He is by far the safest tight end, and he's cheap, so he's probably going in there. I mentioned Packers defense probably being the safest for me. Stacking wise, I don't really know what I want to do. You can make a case for a lot of guys. I think Dak is my least favorite because I don't trust anybody outside of Ferguson to just have volume and produce with it. Jordan Love has been solid so far. He had a really bad interception last week against Cleveland, but for the most part, it's been solid. As a fancy quarterback, he doesn't have the rushing upside, but he's got the matchup and he's somewhat cheaper. Bo Nix also has the matchup. He's been bad. Jake Browning probably going to stay away from, but Justin Fields, 5,500. I think that might be my favorite play. And then you got Tua, buy low opportunity. I understand if you think they're playing from behind, he can get to 300 yards, but if you don't, then he could be under 150 yards. He's been a lot more inconsistent from a fantasy perspective than he has been in recent years. So let's say Justin Fields. I think you can single stack him because of the volume that Garrett Wilson brings. But if you wanted to do a double, I'm all for it, including him and Brees Hall, just to make it work. I mentioned about HN being one of my favorites on this slate. JK, I think this is a 3 running back slate because look at all the I'm going to have multiple guys in great spots that I am fading. And the one with the bad spot, Javonte Williams, has been one of the most consistent, and he's had 5+ targets each of the last 2 weeks. So he could be another guy that gets there just from pass catching volume alone. But let's go JK. Receiver wise, Cortland Sutton, 27 fantasy points. 2 of the 3 weeks he has a touchdown. The other game, shockingly, 1 catch for 6 yards. That was the game that we brought about Troy Franklin being a less than 1%er, and he went off. Last week, it was kind of a dud, but he had 2 strong first weeks, and he's 4,100. So he's the same matchup. Since it's a balanced build, I think I could do that. If you get to Matthew Golden, that leaves you enough for Tyreek Hill. That leaves you enough for George Pickens if you believe in Dallas. I wouldn't do that with this specific build, but is what it is. Brees Hall, 57. If I went that route, that opens up to 6,000. Doesn't excite me really. Let's see. Or, I mean, you can leave salary on the table. I mean, it's not really that far-fetched to just leave it like that. If you don't believe in the Packers, D, you go down. Probably Denver's the best. 62. Doesn't really open anything. Let's see. Or let's go, instead of Sutton, you go Troy Franklin. Let's have Tyreek Hill in there. 72, whatever you want. You got Josh Jacobs as your only Packer correlating with that defense. I mean, that's fine as well. I mean, he's just been a volume king. He hasn't had his breakout game either, under 4 yards carry each of the first 3 weeks. Not much of a pass catcher either, even though he did get some last week. But multiple touchdown upside could get you there as well. So that's a fun thing. You'll have to keep an eye on our Discord. I'll be posting final lines and exposures, but we got exactly 1 hour left. If you are joined in, we appreciate you tuning in. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, join our Discord for final lines, picks, and community plays, all that fun stuff. So can't thank you guys enough. I'm going to get out of here, get out of your hair. I appreciate you guys so much for the first stream. Apologies for the technical difficulties at the beginning, but we will do better on the next one. So we will see you next time.